This episode is brought to you by Steamy Chick Vaginal Steam Facilitator Certification. Learn the ancient practice of vaginal steaming to improve menstrual cycle health and fertility. Become a vaginal steam facilitator for only $194 online and begin offering this service that is quickly growing in demand as women receive this advanced form of women's health. Head over to steamychick.com and click certification for more information. You are cordially invited. Yes, you. You're invited to join us in my 10-week Fertility Awareness Mastery group program, starting in July of 2018. Learn how to chart your cycles, gain confidence using fertility awareness as your primary method of birth control, optimize your cycles for achieving pregnancy, and really learn how to utilize your menstrual cycle as a diagnostic tool. For more information, head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program. That's fertilityfriday.com/group program. Can't wait to see you there. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 208. Welcome to the 208th episode of the Fertility Friday podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lisa from fertilityfriday.com, and this is your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. I'm excited to share another installment of my Fertility Awareness Method reality series with you. So in today's episode, I have an on-air client call with my client, Minky. So her name is Michelle and her nickname is Minky. So you'll hear me in the episode introduce her as Michelle and then call her Minky. So in case you're wondering why that is. But Minky was a part of my most recent 10-week Fertility Awareness Method group program. And she was in the birth control group, actively avoiding pregnancy. And at the time of this interview, we were just finishing our time together. So I think we had our interview around like the 9th week or the 10th week. So basically the last week. And whenever I interview somebody towards the end of the program, you can hear the confidence that they have in the charting. The questions are a little bit different. And so often we've already had plenty of time. So in our sessions together, we had lots of time to really go through the basics of charting. So by the time you're hearing this interview, Minky, we already went through the basic charting, cervical mucus, cervical position. And in this episode, we're really kind of clearing up some of those like niggly last minute details, just the additional questions that come up over time. And at the time of this recording, the next round of Fertility Awareness Mastery is actually starting in about a week and a half. So if you're listening in real time, there's still time for you to join us. And at the time that I'm releasing this, I still have about 2 spots available. So you are invited to join us in our program. And I'd love to have you there. And, I get a lot of emails from women who are thinking about joining the program and wondering if the program is right for them. And so I've had emails from women who have never charted a cycle and are just planning to come off the pill like right now. And so I've had a number of women join the group program immediately off the pill. And I've had women join the program when they've never even charted one chart before. And I've also had women, so Minky is a good example of that in today's episode, where she had actually charted for about a year before we started working together. And so what I find is that this course really levels the playing field, because even if you've charted your cycles before, you have charted with different methods. So you're learning a new method. So everyone is basically starting from scratch. And regardless of whether you have charting experience under your belt or whether you have never charted, you will have an equal opportunity to gain confidence. So towards the end of the group, everyone is at that really excellent confident level, regardless of whether or not they had any charting experience. So what this means for you is that you're welcome to join us regardless of your charting level experience. There's no requirement that you had to chart a certain number of cycles. There's no requirement that your cycles look perfect. There's no requirements at all. Basically, if you are wanting to join us, your cycles are perfect the way that they are, and your experience level is perfect the way that it is. So for more information, head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program and make sure to apply as soon as you can so that we can make sure to save your spot. And before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to take a moment and thank our new show sponsor, Steamy Chick. And so you'll remember from episode 202, which aired really recently, in my interview with Kelly, we talked all about vaginal steaming and how not only is it a powerful healing tool for women for all kinds of menstrual related complaints, it's also used in dozens of countries around the world by women. So even though it's not something that most of us have heard, living in Western countries, I was speaking to a woman the other day whose family is from Haiti, and she mentioned that it's just what they do. So it's really common culturally for Haitian women to do vaginal steaming postpartum. And I thought that was really interesting because I'm West Indian and I had no idea that that was just like a regular common practice that women do in Haiti. So make sure to head over to steamychick.com and click on the certification tab for more information about the Steamy Chick Vaginal Steam Facilitator certification. So not only is vaginal steaming important for women's health and something that, you should take some time to learn a little bit more about, I know that there's many of you listening who are practitioners yourselves and may want to consider adding this to your practice or just learning more about it for your own purposes. So again, that's steamychick.com and click on the certification tab for more information about the Steamy Chick Vaginal Steam Facilitator certification program. Now let's jump into today's episode. And I'm really excited today to be here with Michelle. Michelle is coming. Where are you in the world? Because I know you're from Australia, but where are you right now?
Oh, I'm actually from South Africa. Right now I'm in Orange Beach, Alabama.
See, I totally missed your accent. Like I totally just got a totally different accent. But either way, Michelle is joining us from far away, and I'm really excited to have you on the show today. So in today's reality series session, we're going to be delving into Michelle's charts, and Michelle's a member of my 10-week Fertility Awareness Mastery program. And as you're listening to this episode, we're actually winding down today. After we record this call, we're actually having our very last session. So we've been together now, Michelle, for almost 3 months. And so I think this is a really great time to be having our session because you've kind of already gone through the program. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, and thank you for coming on the show. I'm glad that you're here today. I wanted to start by just if you would take us through a little bit about your contraceptive history, when you first got your period, and if you've ever used hormonal birth control before, and kind of bring us to where we are at today.
Okay, sure. I started my period when I was 16 years old, bit of a late bloomer. And they always seemed to be very light, my periods. And then I went on to hormonal birth control when I was 17. And that was triphasal. And then I went on to Depo-Provera, and I did that for maybe a year. And then I went on to Diane, which was basically for skin, because after Depo I had a lot of skin problems. And then I went on to the Implanon, and that was about 6 months. And I went off that because I started having some pretty bad side effects, like extra facial hair. I was extra moody. I don't know. It was just awful. And then I was told to try Yasmin, and I tried that for 4 months, and I was basically nauseous every single day. I lost so much weight. It was awful. So then I went back onto Diane. And now 2017, I couldn't find Diane here in America. And that's when I started looking for other alternatives. And that's how I found FAM, Fertility Awareness Method. And then I found the Fertility Friday podcast and the Kindara. And, I just kind of jumped right in. Mm-hmm. And here I am almost a year later.
Well, and so you actually, it's kind of funny because you came, according to what I have in my notes, so it may or may not be accurate, but according to what I have in my notes, you came off contraceptives completely on June 21st of 2017. So it's like almost exactly a year from when this is recorded. So it's not going to be released exactly a year, but we're actually recording it pretty much on the anniversary of you coming off of hormonal birth control, which is interesting.
Yeah, wow. It's almost my 1 year famiversary.
That's right. So walk us through the past year. So what happened when you first came off of hormonal birth control, and how has it been working towards transitioning to FAM?
Well, when I first came off, I had a very short cycle and I had my period straight away, but it was quite a heavy period, which is something that I haven't really experienced. And because I was charting with taking my basal body temperature, I could see that it looked like I had ovulated, but the temperatures were really low and they kind of went under that cover line. So I sort of took it as an unovulatory cycle just to be safe. And then my next cycle was quite long. It was about 44 days. And then ever since then, it's sort of been between 32 and 24 days.
Mm-hmm.
So considering I'd been on hormonal birth control of so many different kinds for almost 20 years, I think my body jumped right back in. But I was taking a lot of supplements and stuff to help support my body during the process.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's really helpful for all the listeners to hear what that was like for you. It sounds like it was fairly normal. So what's normal after you come off of birth control, especially during that first year, it can take a couple of months for your cycle to return. In your case, your cycle returned kind of straight away, which is good. And although there was some fluctuations in terms of length, so it wasn't just, we were just joking about the 28-day thing. Neither of us have had a 28-day cycle. 17 years of charting, and I still have never had a cycle that was exactly 28 days. But just to know that that's normal to have some fluctuation. And it seems like, especially over the past couple of months, your cycle has kind of fallen into more of a regular pattern.
Yes, it has. More along the line of like between 27 and 30 days.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the challenges that you faced, especially at the beginning of the group, was limited mucus production. So if I go back, so the listeners will be able to see your charts, but if we go back to the first couple of charts that you were charting with this new charting system, we had a lot of jokes about that in the group because it's always dry. Maybe just talk to us a little bit about what it was like for you when you started using, the wiping method to check for mucus, and how it affected kind of learning to chart by having this constant dry observation.
It kind of got very frustrating because every single time I would wipe, it would be dry. And I always used to joke with you saying it's like the Kalahari Desert down there. What is going on? And I had one cycle that was literally dry every single day. It was so super annoying. And that kind of got maybe just a little depressing, if you would want to say that, because I was like, why am I not seeing all this awesome stuff that everybody else is seeing?
No. Well, and I wanted you to share that because although it in the moment it is really frustrating, but this is an observation that I've actually seen quite frequently. So not in every woman that I've worked with who comes off of hormonal birth control, but in quite a high percentage, I would say. And especially for my clients who've had an extensive history of hormonal birth control. So if I'm working with someone who's been kind of on and off birth control 10, 15, nearly 20 years, it seems to be more likely that we're seeing, at least initially when you're coming off, some women will actually have what's called that dry cycle where you did ovulate. So I'm looking at the cycle. This was between April and May. I'm looking at the cycle. And it's very clear that you did ovulate because we have a very clear temperature shift.
Yeah.
And
that was a really good one, wasn't it?
yeah, it was like a really clear and obvious temperature shift. And I'm trying to see, yes, you were checking your cervical position. So we can also see that your cervical position very clearly changed around ovulation. So even though you weren't seeing mucus, you did ovulate. And so this is a situation where your cervix is still recovering from the hormonal birth control, and it's kind of organizing itself. So,
and also I was taking the antihistamines, which I stopped doing this last cycle, which is when I found that I had more cervical mucus.
That's right. Yeah. And I remember, because you asked about whether or not you thought that could play a role. And so we were kind of looking at all the different possibilities of what could be drying up your, like what could be contributing.
But even when I wasn't taking that, it was still not really that much.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when I first came off the hormonal birth control, I found that I did have cervical mucus, but it was more along the creamy side than actually any stretchy stuff. And then I would have like stretchy stuff in weird times of the month. I'd be like, what's this doing here?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think my poor cervix was very confused.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to give a little bit of hope to the listeners, I mean, like I said, it's very common. I have seen it several times where you've got a couple dry cycles. But what I also see is that once we start supporting the cervix, identifying if there's any other contributing factors like the antihistamines in your case, Minky, we do see that shift. So in your case, the following cycle, we do have several days of mucus. So it seemed like the antihistamines were really drying everything up down there. And as the cervix heals and restores those nutrients, once you've been off birth control for a little bit longer and you start focusing on those areas, it does seem to improve.
Yeah.
So let's jump into it. We talked a little bit in the pre-chat, but let me know what is at the top of your mind, what you want to make sure that we focus on in today's session.
Well, as you know, I've got about at least a year's worth of cycles. And, in the beginning, I was just sort of trying to figure it out. I'd read Taking Charge of Your Fertility. So it was all kind of self-taught. And I guess I just wanted to go over my cycles with...
Mm-hmm. Well,
I've put the cover line in the right place, whether, all of those niggly bits and those, just to make sure that I can actually say that I'm confident now, that I know where I need to put my cover, ovulate, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. It cut out a little bit, but yeah, it sounds like you want to just go through the charts and make sure that we kind of look, especially at the cover line, to make sure that you're putting that in the correct spot. So for the listeners who may not be familiar with the term cover line, so cover line or baseline, it means the same thing. It's just the word for the line that we would put on the chart that separates the lower pre-ovulatory temperatures and the higher post-ovulatory temperatures. And so as we were talking a little bit in the pre-chat, Minky, there's a lot of different methods of fertility awareness charting. There's lots of different resources. And so some of the resources have very specific rules as to, the temperature has to be this much higher and the line has to be this much higher or lower, whatever the case is. And, the method that I've been trained in, it doesn't really provide a whole bunch of really specific niggly rules. So ultimately, what I've seen, and just from experience and from my training, when we're looking at where to place the cover line, really it's what we're actually looking for is we're looking to confirm ovulation with a clear shift in temperature. So what I always say is that it should be really obvious. Anyone should be able to look at your chart and see that there were lower temperatures and there were higher temperatures. Like my joke is that like a 2-year-old, well, maybe not 2, maybe like a 4-year-old or your partner who has maybe very little understanding of this whole fertility awareness thing should be able to look at your chart and be like, oh, why are those ones higher than those ones? Like, so it should be very, very obvious. So as we take a look, but it's not, as we all know, it's not always that obvious. So, and that can be because of all the reasons we talked about in the group, like all the different illness, travel, stress, alcohol consumption, like there's all these different things that can affect your temps. So what I'm looking at here that the audience can't see is, this is a chart from last year. So this is like your July 2017 chart.
Yeah,
right?
That's my first one.
Yes. Yeah. Love it.
So that was my withdrawal bleed, which was 5 days of bleeding and 1 day of spotting.
Yes. I love that we have the whole trajectory of the past year in these charts. Fantastic. So what we're seeing on this chart is that your temperatures were kind of wonky right after you came off of it. They were kind of high in the first like 14-day period, actually. So you had your bleed, you didn't take it, which is, probably a good idea, but you didn't take your temperature then. You started taking your temperature on day 8. So we've got some wonky temperatures, which I would expect. But
I was waiting for my thermometer to arrive from Amazon.
Okay. I love it. You're like on top of it. I love it. And so, but then your temperatures actually fall to a normal range. So I would say this is typical of any time there's a transition. So in your case, your transition was off of hormonal birth control. So as those hormones were leaving your body, as your body was kind of normalizing, we see this kind of weird wonky temps. So I wouldn't really worry about that. But after that little phase, the temperatures do seem to fall into a pattern. So in this case, I would say the cover line, you could pull it down a little bit. So the way that I instruct my clients to draw the cover line, what we're looking for is a clear shift. So when you're looking at the temperatures, you're looking for, to confirm ovulation, you're looking for 3 temperatures that are higher than the past 6.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you identify, but we're talking about 3 normal temperatures. So if you have a random outlier or something like that, that doesn't count. But in this case, we've got the normal temperatures, we've got the rise. So I would just put the line slightly over
the
highest, like normal pre-ovulatory temperature.
Yeah, I don't know. Kindara is really buggy lately. I can't seem to get that cover line to move.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter that much, right? Like it's kind of the purpose of the line is just to make it clear so that you can get that idea that
just to give you a visual.
Yeah. So I think the concept is more important. The concept is that there should be this line where before you ovulate, the temps are below the line. And after you ovulate, the temps are above the line. And once you ovulate, they should go above the line and stay above the line. And if it's
I had
like
quite a few
white,
that kind of dropped down that cycle. Well, which was kind of understandable. It was like, whoa, is this an ovulation? Now what am I supposed to do? I haven't done this for 20 years.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, and I wouldn't really worry about it because overall we can still see a fairly consistent pattern. Even though they kind of dropped a little bit, like we can still group the temperatures together. Like there's this group and then there's this group. And then in your charts, as it kind of, you can see that it gets more obvious to take a look at. So now looking at, this is the second chart after. So this was your 44-day cycle, second cycle off birth control.
Yeah.
And so long pre-ovulatory phase, you didn't ovulate until about day 31, I would guess, based on the chart.
Yeah, this one was very difficult because I had those 6 temperatures that were so close together and they were all the same. It kind of looked like robotic temperatures. And then they kind of went up and then they kind of went up and then they kind of went up. It was weird. So in the beginning, I actually thought that my shift was on day 29. But as the cycle came to an end, I realized that was a very long luteal phase, which was probably not right. So that's why I moved it up.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. And I would, so when I'm looking at it too, it's just the way my eye kind of sees everything. I mean, I suppose it is possible, like the shift being on day 28, but because we had several pre-ovulatory temperatures that were kind of higher, let me see.
Yeah, otherwise I would have had a 16-day luteal phase. And my first one was 13, and I've never had a long luteal phase like that ever since then. It's always been like 13 or 14 days. So, that cycle was like, I don't know.
It is possible to have a 16-day luteal phase, just to put it out there. It's not very common. And if your luteal phase is legitimately tend towards like 16 days or longer and you're not pregnant, I think that it just depends. Like if you're trying to conceive, you may want to request to have that investigated because there are certain ovulatory disorders that can cause that type of effect where your luteal phase appears to be longer, but you're actually not really ovulating normally. So having a one-off like that so I guess what I'm getting at, Minky, is that having a one-off like that wouldn't, it's possible.
It's not concerning.
Well,
and it was also my second cycle of hormonal birth control. Yeah. So it was going to be a bit weird.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard to go back, especially because, I mean, the way that we've been charting together is a little bit different. But it is possible that ovulation did happen, say, on day 28 here. It would kind of line up a little bit more with your mucus pattern. And then if we look at the kind of 6 temperatures that are lower, like 3 temperatures that are higher than the previous 6, it is possible. So just something to keep in mind. So when it comes to like currently, so in these charts, like figuring out where to place it, how confident are you feeling about drawing the line in your more recent charts?
I'm a lot more confident now with drawing my lines with my most recent charts. It's just when I go back and I look at my old ones and I'm like, did I do them right? Because it was all new and, so it was all new and I wasn't quite sure if I was doing it right.
Yeah.
But I feel confident now for my current charts that I'm putting them in the right place. Like I get really excited when I have those 3 high temperatures. I'm like, yes, I can draw my cover line.
Yes. Well, and I would say, so the challenge with looking at the previous charts is that in our group, I'm kind of on top of everybody for making clear notes about the temperatures. So temperatures are highly variable. And so in order to be able to rely on them, we have to be making notes so that when we have temperatures that are out of the ordinary, so now we're looking at your September chart for last year. So we've got a temperature on day 11 that's a little bit higher. It's out of the norm for your pre-ovulatory phase. So then, me, I'm always asking, so was anything going on that day? Did you get up a little bit later? And so in terms of really interpreting the data, it's easier to interpret it when you're noting what time you usually get up, or if you got up at that night before, or if there was something, because then we know if that's a normal temperature or if it's like an outlier. So with this chart here, I would say that this temperature on the 11th looks like an outlier to me because it's just really high and it doesn't really match the typical pattern that we're seeing. It could not
You're talking about 11 and 12? Because 12 are
12,
marked as a questionable.
My brain is even ignoring that. But yeah, so 12 is like way higher. So I would say day 12, yeah. But even this one, I'm kind of like, I would want to know, like, did you possibly get up a little bit later that day or have more of a restless sleep? So with that being in mind, because what the way that my brain works when I look at charts, because I've looked at so many, is that it kind of automatically filters out things that are weird. So all I see is like the overall pattern. So like I see that your pre-ovulatory temps typically fall within kind of like this range here. And what that means is that I might be inclined to put ovulation closer to day 17. So you've marked ovulation as day 18, but I would think, okay, I think day 17, and then you would be able to draw your line, depending on whether those temperatures are normal or not, closer to like 97.3. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that would be my thought.
So then you're saying that I should just put it one day earlier?
I would say possibly, because on the 18th, we do have a temperature.
You can see that there was low and then higher. Yeah.
Yeah. It's higher than kind of what we're seeing as the normal in the pre-ov.
Yeah. So even though I don't have 6 confirmed low temperatures, I think I was just being a little conservative there because of that fact that I had those strange outlier temperatures. So I was just trying to keep it. So instead of going with 6, I kind of went with 8 days because of those 2 strange temperatures.
Yeah.
Instead of just going with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, the 5 low temperatures. So I could have actually confirmed it with just 5 low temperatures.
Well, I mean, it's real life. So we have a couple days where we didn't, no, that was a temperature that day. It was just an outlier. We don't always have kind of the perfect chart, the perfect information. Sometimes you kind of miss a day of temperature taking or something like that. And you were checking your cervix at this stage. You're probably feeling a little bit more confident now about it. So I would say if this happened now and you weren't like the temperature wasn't really adding up, because it's also possible to ovulate when you have like the stomach flu and you can't even rely on any of those temperatures to tell you anything. And so that's why it's helpful to like, so now you have a handle on the mucus. You also have a handle on the cervical position. You may have even noticed other secondary signs that are kind of specific to you. Like I know some women will notice that their breasts are tender at a certain time of their cycle, or so there may even be other secondary signs that you're looking at. But in situations like that, then you draw on some of those other signs. So if this were to happen, you would be looking at your cervix and waiting for it to feel, low and close firm.
Yeah, I definitely have noticed that point of change that you were talking about, because in the beginning I wasn't quite sure. I was just kind of like, okay, I'm feeling and that's what it feels like, and I was just kind of charting it. Whereas now I can actually feel that point of change where you said that even though it feels like it might be medium or it's soft, but is it different from what it was yesterday? Which really resonated with me when you said that to me, because I was like, yes, today it is different and my temperature has risen and this and this and this, and you kind of like put all those signs together, and it's just incredible how you can figure out what exactly is going on with all these different signs. I think it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And although it's a little bit at the beginning, it's harder, but it's only harder because you don't have the experience of it yet. So let's say you chart your cycles for the next 5 years. Well, that's 5 times 12 is what, like 60 cycles. Just obviously this is not an exact science here, but let's say 60 cycles. So, I mean, after you've seen a similar pattern and shift like 50, 60 times, then your body basically, like, when I talk about the cervix, I say your body is doing the same thing essentially every time.
You just got to figure out your own personal pattern.
Yeah. So once you figure out what it's doing, it's going to do the same thing next cycle, the same thing the cycle after that. So all you're trying to do is crack your body's code. Well, and this is a good example of, so you have a chart here. This cycle was 25 days. So this is one of the shorter cycles you were telling me about. And so just because of the way
Mm-hmm.
things were, we had a bunch of outlying temperatures. So temperatures that were obviously just like there's one random temperature that's like a whole degree higher than the norm. So,
Yeah, thanks to a glass of wine or two.
yes.
Wine does that to me. I have 1 or 2 glasses of wine, and if it's after 8 o'clock, I know my temperature is going to be above like 98 point something.
Yes. Well, so it
I'm
is.
just like, okay, I'm having a glass of wine. I can just like write that temperature off right now.
Yeah. So it's not always that obvious, but in your case, it's obvious. But what that, it's kind of like your question to me before, which was like, well, can you confirm ovulation without having the six temperatures? So in this particular cycle, because we had some of those outliers, you didn't have six pre-ovulatory temperatures. So, but
No, I had 4.
yeah, but you can still confirm ovulation because you can see a clear shift that is stays. So the temperature rises, but it stays high, and it's obviously higher than the previous temperatures. And
Yeah,
we
and that
see
was a
that,
pretty good shift as well. I mean,
yeah,
that went up like, I was like, okay, here we go.
yeah,
Lift off.
yes. And it stayed high. And then we have it coincided with your cervical mucus. And then we also see a change in your cervical position. Like we also see that it kind of goes, it changes.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I would say that, so that's just in general to draw the cover line. Now, when you're using the method for birth control, what we're wanting to do to identify when you're in your post-ovulatory infertile phase is we want to combine the two signs, like, and the cervix. So we want to combine the three signs. But so what we're looking for is the 3 normal temperatures that are higher than the previous 6 normal temperatures. And we're also looking for your cervical mucus to dry up. And we're looking for those signs to match up. And so when you're looking specifically to identify your fertile window so that you can pinpoint the days of your cycle that you can have sex on without getting pregnant, then we're looking, if you have a situation where you're unsure or the temperatures, like what you said in that one cycle when you said, I didn't have the 6 temperatures, so I kind of like rejigged it and gave myself more of a margin. So that's something that you want to wait until both of those signs match up, until both of them are crystal clear, until it's obvious that anyone could look at your chart and see that you've had a shift and it's sustained.
Yeah. I am quite conservative with matching all 3 things together. So, yeah, I think I've done pretty well. I haven't fallen pregnant yet.
Yes. Well, and that's, I mean, once you get the hang of it, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, and where you are on that intention scale plays a big part in how conservative you are about it. So when you know that you're a 0 and you don't want to get pregnant, that's not an option for you right now, then when you're looking at the chart, I think you are more likely to to take that conservative approach and really look at all of the signs, make sure they all match up, waiting an extra day when you need to. If you have something really weird happen that you don't understand, always waiting that 3 days to kind of see what happens type of thing, then that's how you use the method successfully.
Mm-hmm. Keep calm and shout on.
That's right. we need to make some t-shirts. So tell me any other kind of questions or comments. So now looking at this chart here for this cycle.
Yeah. I've been doing the vaginal steaming, like you suggested, to help with my really short periods and the brown spotting that I was getting a lot of. And this cycle, I seem to not only did one vaginal steam because I didn't have a lot of time, but it was just the day before my period. So I felt that the timing was pretty good. And I have noticed a change in the color of my period. It's sort of becoming more of a wine red than that dark brown.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is great. It's still really thick, but I guess that will kind of work its way out the more vaginal steams that I do. And then, on the 3rd day, as soon as I start in the spotting range, then I start the steaming again. And I'm really hoping that this is what's going to help with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had a number of clients try steaming, especially as we talked about in the group, like especially when they're seeing dark brown bleeding
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a woman, like we all have that sense of like, I don't think it should be this color.
Yeah, no, this is not normal. Why is it so
Yeah.
brown?
So typically, it's like those two main situations where it's either dark brown and it looks oxidized, like old
Mm,
blood, or it's really thick, like molasses, and it just especially if you're using like a menstrual cup, it kind of like doesn't come out, like it doesn't flow.
yeah.
It doesn't seem
Or
like
when it does, it kind of like gloops out.
yeah, it's like goop. And so in those two situations, I typically have clients wanting to, try steam to see if that'll help. And a lot of my clients have had success with it. Whereas they'll tell me things like, wow, I've never seen my period so red before. Or
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Well, this is the second month that I've been doing it. So I'm sure it will take a few more because I was on hormonal birth control for so long. So I think it's going to take a little while for that to normalize. But I am seeing changes. And something as simple as sitting over some steam, it's just amazing that it has such wonderful, I know, it's just insane that something as simple as sitting over some steam can make such a big difference to your cycle. It's incredible.
Yeah. I
told my sister about it and she's like, what is this, witchcraft?
So,
she's like, you're just being silly. And I'm like, no, seriously, you got to try it.
Yeah, but I really like the analogy of it's like a warm bath, because I think people hear steam and think like it's painful, but it's like a warm bath. It's just warm and nice, comfortable.
Yeah, it's like a sauna.
Yes, a sauna, a localized sauna, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the whole purpose of even considering doing something like that is to improve the circulation and to just support your uterus in releasing the lining. And so, and you can see for yourself within a cycle or two if it's doing anything. So I think that's the good thing about it as well, where when you do it, if it's working for you, you'll see results within the first cycle, second cycle.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging. And I just wanted to check in with you about your notations. So for the audience, you can't see. So Minky's charting on paper, which I'm always surprised because when I first started doing this, I actually thought 0 of my clients would chart on paper, but it turns out that a pretty good percentage of my clients like the paper option. So, but anyway, so you're charting on paper. And so I just want to check in with you. So the observations that you're seeing, the stretchy, the kind of cloudy, clear, stretchy mucus, those would be peak observations. So do you have like a dark purple?
They're all dark purple. I'd used whiteout on one of the purples, so that's why it looks like it's a light purple, but it's not.
Okay, just checking.
It's just because of the whiteout on there, the purple kind of, because I just used like a marker, and it didn't really come out as dark as the other, but they're all dark purple.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sometimes you can't tell with the picture because it doesn't take up the color.
Yeah.
So tell me about that, because it seems like this cycle you had all the mucus that you didn't have in the previous cycles.
Well, this was the cycle that I didn't take the antihistamine, and I sort of stopped halfway through my luteal phase last cycle, so that I would have, because apparently it takes about 7 days for it to get out of the system. So that's why I thought before I get my period, I'd actually like to stop taking the antihistamine so that I can have a full cycle without it and see whether it actually makes a difference. And it really did make a huge difference, but I didn't have any creamy days. I just went straight into, the stretchy, clear. There was that one day on day 11. That's the one that looks like the light purple day. I didn't actually have any that I could finger test, but the paper, the toilet paper was shiny and it was lubricative, and it had all the sensations of lubrication, but there was nothing really to stretch.
Okay. Well,
so that's why I marked it a 10 DSL.
Okay.
Because it wasn't wet. It was damp, but it was very lubricative.
Okay. But I mean, what we're seeing is a pretty well-defined fertile window. So we are seeing a clear shift from your pre-ovulatory dry days to when you're actually starting to see mucus. So on these days when you were seeing mucus, was it dry when you were wiping?
The first 3 days, yes. The only reason why I had those markings was when I was checking my cervix, and after checking my cervix, I would find some clear, stretchy, or like a gummy almost. There was one day where it was kind of gummy, gluey, can't remember which one it was. I didn't really mark it. I think it might have been the 8CK, where it had like a little bit of a bounce to it, more than a stretch. But those 3 days were basically from internal checks or just on the tissue paper. But the last 2 days where I had it actually mentioned L, that was what actually came out on the tissue paper.
Okay.
You know, and I was super excited. I was like, woo, so excited.
Awesome. That's exciting. Well, and you have then outside of your fertile window, like it's pretty dry, like it's been dry.
Yeah.
So we've established that it's been dry.
Yep.
But,
I know what that is.
Yes, we know what the dry observation is. But we are also seeing a couple of these damp observations. So tell me a little bit about those.
You're talking about the ones just before the 2s?
Yeah, the before your period here, and then after.
Yeah, it's like on the tissue paper, there is just like a very small damp spot. It still feels dry. It's not lubricative, but it's just a little damp. You know, like it's not wet, like it's wet. It's just a little damp, you know, but it still has that dry sensation. But you can see the tissue paper has been wet a little bit. It doesn't look like it's soaked all the way through or anything like that. It's just like a little bit damp.
Okay. Well, and how do you feel about like, where are you at in terms of your comfort using the method for birth control? Like how are you kind of like, where are you at? We talked a little bit about kind of like the phases that you go through from being really new to it and kind of going into it to actually fully using it. So how comfortable are you? And then do you still have questions or concerns about any of the rules, like the count of 3 and how to manage using the method?
I'm feeling super confident now. I think in the beginning, my cervical fluid observations, I was a little bit concerned about that because I wasn't quite sure what exactly was fertile and what was not, and what was cell slough and what was not. So I think checking with the tissue paper, it's definitely made a big difference to the way that I observe those signs. Because before, you know, whenever I check my cervix, that's what I was going according to. So I had a lot of creamy days in the beginning. So, you know, all those observations in the beginning when they were creamy, I was like, now I take them with a pinch of salt because I know now that by checking my cervix and seeing what's on my finger after doing that is not really the best way to check.
Well, yeah.
Because there will always be something there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's helpful to be able to clearly define the difference there. So I think that
yeah,
I know that was a concern.
Yeah, so that's definitely changed the way that I check for my cervical fluid. And I think maybe I'm a lot more confident now, even with my cervix, because of the way that you explained to me that point of change for you is different to somebody else's. So you've got to realize and learn what your cervix does during your cycle and where is that point of change. And now it's like clear as day. I'm like, oh yes, okay, I know I've ovulated because now it is firm. It is like, you know,
Awesome.
It's low, it's closed.
And one thing I would say about the chart is that, so when I'm using the chart, because I chart on paper as well, so after my peak day, so here, day 15 was the last day that you had clear, stretchy, lubricative mucus. So
yes.
You might want to actually write in like a count of 3. So I would actually put like a number 1, 2, 3 over the little dots.
Oh, the little dots.
So you can do it however it makes sense for you.
You're talking about the peak?
Yeah. So you want to make sure that, I mean, you might have it in your head, but just because I'm a fertility awareness instructor, and because I'm looking at your chart.
And I'm using this for birth control.
Yeah. And you're using it for birth control. Even if you weren't using it for birth control, I say this to my clients who are using it for conception because it's just as important for women who are trying to conceive to confirm ovulation. It's very easy to assume you've ovulated and stop having sex when you're trying, and then you haven't.
And then you miss the window.
Yeah. So for either party, it is important. So I would make a point of actually, when you have your peak day, actually writing like a little PK somewhere and then doing like 1, 2, 3 so that it's there. Just the visual is helpful for everybody.
Yeah.
And then it makes it more obvious as well, because then you can just clearly glance down at your temperatures and you'll see for the most part, that they kind of match up fairly closely.
Yeah. Now, in the beginning, even though I'd have my peak day, sometimes a few days after that would happen, I'd have a bit of mucus. But again, that was when I was still checking my cervix and not actually doing the tissue paper. So I kind of feel like I need to disregard all of those mucus signs that I had before.
Well, I mean, we talked about how to manage that. So, you are checking your cervix every day. So not all women do check their cervix, but in your case, especially because we had those several days of like dry, but you were still ovulating, we needed more information so that we could identify ovulation. So what I would, and you know this from the group. So my suggestion is to record your paper observations as your kind of quote unquote official. If you feel the need to, like, because sometimes you'll see like some creamy stuff or whatever if you check your cervix. So I suggest for you to put that information in the comments, as you know. However, if you check your cervix and you pull out a big gob of like clear, stretchy mucus, you cannot ignore that. So make sure to record that.
Yeah.
And that has been very helpful for my clients to then, because the whole purpose of this, like the whole cervical mucus checking thing is to clearly identify the difference between which days are fertile, which days are not. So that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm feeling a lot more confident about that now.
Awesome. And so, Minky, I feel like we've kind of covered quite a bit in our call today. It's a little different. I always say, like, when we do these calls, it really depends. Like, if we were to have done this call when you were first, like before we had gone through 10 weeks together, you would have had different questions. Right now, the questions you have are kind of more refining and fine tuning your knowledge.
It's like the little bits that I didn't really get to talk about during the course.
Yes.
Because we've spoken about a lot of stuff and it's been awesome.
Yes. Well, so Minky, for someone who's listening, I mean, maybe you can share how you felt coming off hormonal birth control, because for most women, it is just absolutely terrifying. So how did you feel coming off of it, and how did you kind of talk yourself down from the ledge? Like how the fear of getting pregnant right away?
I think for me, it was, I tried once before, like a year before that, to come off. And it was more the side effects of coming off that was more scary for me. Like I got some really serious bad acne. So I went back on it. But when I realized that I couldn't get the one that I was using here in America, I kind of panicked a little because I thought, what am I going to do now? I've got 1 or 2 packs left. What am I going to do? So I still actually have 1 pack of my birth control. For some reason, I don't know why, for nostalgia, I don't know, but I'm still keeping it. I don't think I'll ever take it, but I know that it's there for some safety net purposes or whatever. It seems kind of silly, but I have still one. But I think for me, it was more scary, the effects of the acne. Like the acne is one of the longest standing things that has really been plaguing me since I stopped taking birth control. And when I was a teenager, I didn't have any acne. This is all like happened after I turned 20 something, all this acne started. But as far as for falling pregnant, I think maybe the first 6 months was really scary. I was like, I got the Fem cap and I got some Contra gel and I was using like 3 things together during the fertile phase. Like I was going full out. I was like, this is not happening. I'm not going to fall pregnant.
Love it.
But now I'm just like, yeah, okay, withdrawal's okay. Yeah, I think today will be a good day. But right now I'm single, so I'm not having to use it for birth control. So right now it's more for health. But at the time, I was pretty stressed out about it, And then I had, for the first time in my life, a condom break on me. It was the most stressful thing ever.
Yeah. Well, and we talk a little bit about that, because at the end of the day, fertility awareness, as I always say, it's real life. I mean, we can all pretend like there's this perfect thing and your cycle's perfect and everything goes according to plan. But the thing about fertility awareness is, in order to use it, you have to be an adult. You have to have an adult conversation with yourself about how to handle these situations. And you also are forced to have adult conversations with your partner. And so, for instance, if you are at a 0 on the scale of pregnancy and you're using fertility awareness and you're having sex in your fertile window using a barrier method such as a condom or a combination of something, it's really important to have that, just because, I mean, I'm a big condom fan. Like condoms are highly effective methods of birth control, but obviously it is possible for them to break. Perfect use of a condom, making sure to check the expiry date, never using oil lubricant. Like, you can kind of making sure the condom is the right size, right fit, and all. Like, there's a lot of things you can do to try your best to minimize it, but it can still happen. So then the question, really, because you mentioned I still have that pack of birth control just in case something happens. Some women who are using fertility awareness will actually proactively purchase Plan B and have it there, such that if anything does happen in their fertile window, a condom breaking, or
you have it there.
There's a partner who said he was going to withdraw and kind of miss withdrew. That you actually have, because this is real life. We are adults. We have to, if you are using a method such as fertility awareness, you do have to just look at it pretend you're an adult. What would an adult do? You would look at the situation, look at all the possible kind of, things that could happen, and then you would decide how you would manage those situations. And I think it's important to have that conversation with yourself, because there's nothing wrong with kind of having it for example, having Plan B there in case you ever have a broken condom situation. But what's great about fertility awareness is, Minky, is that if you had a condom break and you were 8 days past ovulation, that
it would
pregnancy,
be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as pregnancy is concerned, there would be no concerns there, because you would know. So it can actually obviously save you from having to use Plan B in lots of different situations.
Yeah. I was lucky that the condom broke and we realized it before it became a problem. So I wasn't really too concerned about that. We just used another condom thereafter. But it was scary that the fact that one had actually broken. It's the first time that I've ever had one break on me. So I was just glad that we realized, and we put on another condom and carried on. So
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's real life, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and so for what advice or just inspiration or any just, words of wisdom that you would give to one of the listeners who's who's on her own journey. So she's somewhere in there, maybe she's thinking about coming off of birth control, obviously having the same fears as we all do that you will get pregnant, like the day that you stop taking the pill. What encouragement would you want to give to her?
I think just give your body time, love your body through it, because you have been on birth control for however long you have been, and it's been hard on your body. So, just be patient, be kind, and let your body do its thing and heal itself, and just be there and, work through it and accept whatever comes, because it's not easy. And as soon as you realize that it's not going to be easy, it becomes easier.
Love that. I love it so much. That's really great. Well, and for someone who is thinking about joining one of the programs and is kind of hesitant, am I going to learn something? Am I really going to feel comfortable using the method after I go through this? What would you want to share about that?
Well, I had been charting for maybe, 9 months or something, 9-10 months. And I thought, what else could I learn? But I learned so much about my cycle and how to do it confidently. And I would definitely recommend it for anybody, even if you have been charting for a while. There's still so much more that you can learn. And it's such a safe space to be able to ask totally way out there questions that you don't normally get to ask other ladies. And you get to hear other ladies' experiences, and TMI Tuesdays is a thing, and It's wonderful.
Yes, love it. Every Tuesday was TMI Tuesday in our group.
Yes, it was.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your experiences so openly with the listeners. I know these episodes are really inspiring, and really my clients always tell me that these ones are their favorite. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
It's been so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes for today's episode over at fertilityfriday.com/208. I hope that you enjoyed my episode with Minky. It was such a treat to have her on the show. So thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on the show and being so open and candid about your experience on hormonal contraceptives and what it's been like for you as you've transitioned from hormonal contraceptives to the fertility awareness method. And so what was fun about working with Minky was that she did come with a year's worth of charting experience. And so the group was a really great opportunity for her to really ask all the questions that she had gathered up over the past 12 months of charting. And it was really great to see. I think I remember the very first time I hosted one of these groups and the very, very first time that I had a woman in the group who had a year's worth of charting experience. I remember feeling nervous, thinking like, oh my goodness, what am I going to be able to teach her? But every single time, regardless of whether I'm working with a woman who has absolutely no charting experience and hasn't even bought her thermometer yet, or if I'm working with a woman like Minky who's been charting her cycles for a year previous to when she joined our group back in April, what I found is time after time, there's a lot of things that are really, really important and helpful to learn. And to be honest, that was my experience also. When I very first started charting, when I was like 18 or 19, I can't remember which one, I kind of taught myself how to chart. I bought Taking Charge of Your Fertility and I was charting, but I remember that I thought I had a pretty good handle on it. Like I really did. But I do remember very clearly that like I never had any dry days. Like I didn't really know what a dry day was and I often had these really long follicular phases. I'd often ovulate later in my cycle. And so I just thought, oh, it's just, I just got mucus all the time. And so I remember that when I first started charting then with women who knew more than I did, who were actually trained in teaching fertility awareness, I remember learning so much. I had thought I knew it all, and it turns out that there was lots more to learn. And so I think what made the biggest difference for me was really learning how to chart mucus in a standardized way. And I know that Minky appreciated that in our time together. And also just being able to put together the signs. But for me, it was really the mucus that was like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. Now I know the difference between a dry day and a mucus day. So I know with Minky, we went through the cervical mucus part, and that was really helpful. We really also delved into the cervical position charting. And so in the training, I really go through that in depth. And I've worked with so many women over the years that, with cervical position in particular, it's really about what you see that your cervix is doing day to day and less about what the book says it's supposed to do. So we really worked on that together. And so it was really, really nice. It's really nice for me to see the group come to full fruition after the 10 weeks. It goes by fast. At the beginning of the program, it always seems like it's going to be so far away. But at the time that I'm recording this, we've actually had our final session. And so tomorrow would have been our next session. And so I think all of us are going through a little bit of withdrawal, or at least we will be tomorrow when because this is the first week that we're not having our sessions. But it goes by so fast. But what's really, really great about it is to see the growth and to see the confidence, to see the women in the group really gain that confidence about charting their cycles and to really get that sense of how different they're feeling and how much more confident they're feeling about their charting when we only started the group a couple weeks prior. So thank you so much, Minky, for being on the show. It was such a pleasure having you in the group, and also the other ladies. We really connected, and we were joking in our last session that it was TMI Tuesdays, because that's always a joke in the sessions. But really and truly, the women in both of my 10-week Fertility Awareness Mastery Group programs really work together to create such a wonderful and safe space for everybody to ask all of their questions. And so to ask all of their questions about charting, all of the questions about cervical mucus and excretions, I'm really comfortable talking about cervical mucus and the cervix and all of the different excretions. And I always say it would take a lot to surprise me because I've heard so much, but I know everyone's not as comfortable talking about their cervix and their various excretions. And so what I really appreciated about this time around our group was just how supportive everybody was, how open everybody was, and also just creating this safe space so that everyone can ask any question. Because what I always say is where else are you going to ask what color your mucus is supposed to be? Where else can you post a video and a picture of the cervical mucus observation that you had today and really check in with somebody about how to classify that. So that's the environment that I always try to create in the groups. And I always say I attract the nicest just sweetest women to me. And it has always just been an incredible group of ladies that come together. And we've always been able to create a really safe space to talk about these really delicate topics. And so yeah. And so just a reminder that you are invited to join us in the next round of Fertility Awareness Mastery. Make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program for more information about this round of groups, which is starting in just about a week and a half, and also how to apply. So again, that's fertilityfriday.com/group program. And I want to say a special shout out to the show sponsor, Steamy Chick. Make sure to head over to steamychick.com and check out the STEAM Facilitator Certification Program. So again, that's steamychick.com. And I just want to thank you for spending the time with me today and taking the time to listen to the show and to support the show. I really appreciate all of you for sharing the show with your friends, for spreading the word. It's because of all of you sharing this information that more and more women are having the opportunity to learn how their cycle works and how it's so intimately connected to their health. And so I just want to thank you for being part of the Fertility Friday community and for helping me to spread the word. This is so important. It's so important that as women, we have the opportunity to really learn about our cycles and how it connects to our health, because there's so few places that really teach us about that. So it's really up to us to take it into our own hands, to educate ourselves and each other. So once again, thank you for being here with me today. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.